June 6th, Omaha Beach, 0630 hours. The water isn't just cold, it's an insult. It's the kind of freezing that shuts down your organs before you can even register the temperature. The English Channel in June is a cruel joke. The air smells like a garbage fire mixed with a slaughterhouse. Diesel smoke, cordite, the perfume of the end of the world. There's a man, Endre Freeman. He's a Hungarian gambler, better known as Robert Capa. He's in a landing barge with 2,000 other poor bastards. They left Samuel Chase at 4 a.m. They dropped like stones into the rough sea and immediately started vomiting into little paper bags the army had thoughtfully provided. The army thinks of everything except how to keep you alive. Capa has 2 Contax cameras wrapped in oilskin tucked into his leather jacket. He has a farewell letter to his family folded neatly into his pocket. He has a will that he didn't want to write. He's not even a soldier. He's just a professional witness. He's there to see things the rest of the civilized world will spend the next 50 years trying to forget. The ramp from the boat drops and the meat grinder starts turning. Everyone jumps into the frigid, waist-deep water and the German machine gun opens up. Capa would later write that the bullets were, quote, tearing holes into the water. He scrambles for one of the steel hedgehogs, one of Hitler's little surrealistic designs, as he called them. And for a few minutes, it's just him, a dead soldier bobbing up and down next to him, and the steel of the hedgehog shielding him from the German bullets. The water is gray, the sky is gray, and the only color in the world is the muzzle flashes and the blood in the water. But Capa does his job. He keeps shooting. His hands are shaking, not from the cold, but from the sheer animal terror of it all. He crawls on his stomach past the floating bodies, repeating a mantra from the Spanish War. This is very serious business. He shoots 4 rolls, 106 frames, which is the only visual record of the first wave of the invasion. Miraculously, he survives. He gets the film back to London. And as the story is told, the legend, and the punchline, a darkroom kid at Life magazine, probably overworked, probably terrified of some deadline, turns up the heat on the drying rack cabinet too high. The emulsion melts and the images slide right off the celluloid. Out of the 106 frames, only 11 survive. And they look like hell. They're grainy and blurry. The contrast is trash. Technically speaking, they are garbage. So when Life magazine runs them, they print a caption apologizing for the quality. They say the images are slightly out of focus because the photographer's hands were shaking. But here's the irony. If you look at these photos today, they're called the Magnificent 11. You don't see the failures. You feel the vibration. You feel the panic. You feel the terror. And a sharp photo would have been, I think, bullshit. It would have looked like a movie set, like a Spielberg shot D-Day with a crane and a fog machine, which is a little ironic because that's exactly what happened. It was these exact images that Spielberg based the look on Saving Private Ryan. The noise, the grain, the absolute destruction. It was the only way to tell the story of the destruction of the world. My name is Patrick Fuller, and this is the Terrible Photographer Podcast. We've made it to episode 38, and I'm calling this episode The Noise in the Shadows. Today, we're talking about fear and physics and truth. Now, for those of you who are paying attention, you notice that I released a bonus episode on Thursday called Good versus Bad. And today's episode is really kind of a expansion or continuation of that episode. And it's part of a new midweek series I'm starting called Basics Deconstructed. It's where we take foundational ideas and concepts and rules of photography and we take them apart and we examine them through a philosophical lens. And I will say as a warning, I'm really not sure the cadence of these things, how often they will drop. I will release them as I have time. It's hard enough sometimes to get regular episodes out, let alone 2. But hey, I'm an overachiever. I just want to say I'm glad you're here. If this is the first time you're listening, welcome to the mess. These episodes are in no particular order, so feel free to jump around. And as always, you can email me anytime with questions, thoughts, hate mail, existential spirals. I respond to everything. I try to, at least. My email is in the show notes. So with that said, let's get into it. Okay, so before we get too far into this, I need to get everyone up to speed on the physics. And at the risk of annoying my experienced photographer listeners, I know you know this, so bear with me. But if you're not a photographer, if you're a designer, a writer, a creative human who just happens to listen because we talk about more than cameras, you need to understand this or the rest of the episode really doesn't make sense. So a photograph is just light hitting a sensor, right? Or film. That's it. Too little light and your image is black. Too much, it's blown out white. Everything is about getting the right amount of light to create a visible image. And photographers really have three controls to do this. And like everything in life, it's about balance. And if you've ever driven a manual transmission, you know that if to get the car moving, you need the right amount of clutch versus gas. Too much clutch, you don't move. Too much gas, and you stall out. A camera works the same way. These three controls are called the exposure triangles. That's sort of a visual representation of how it works. And so these three controls are in a hostage negotiation with each other, essentially. And you need them to be in harmony to get the image that you want. So I want to go through these one by one so you kind of understand where I'm at. First, at the top of the triangle, you have shutter speed. This is essentially time, how long the curtain is open. If you want to freeze a hummingbird's wings, you need a fast shutter. The curtain is only open for a blink, but because it's only open for a blink, you're letting in very little light, so your image goes dark. Which brings us to the second point in the triangle, aperture. This is the iris, which works exactly like your eye. If you walk into a dark room, your pupil opens up wide to let light in. But you walk outside at noon and it shrinks to a pinprick to protect the retina. A camera lens does the same thing. To get more light for that hummingbird, you need to open the aperture wide. But here's the trade-off. When you open the iris, you lose focus depth. If you open it too much, the hummingbird's beak is sharp, but the wings are blurry. So what you gain in light, you lose in focus. Is this making sense so far? Which brings us to the third point in the triangle. This is gain. Think of this like a volume knob on a cheap pair of speakers. If you don't have enough light, the music is too quiet. So naturally, you'll just want to crank the volume or crank the ISO. But when you turn up the volume and it works, the image gets brighter. But like those cheap pair of speakers, when you crank the volume to the max, you get distortion, static, hiss. And so in photography, that hiss is called noise. So if you use ISO to save the shot, you're going to introduce grain into the image or noise into the image, especially in the shadows. And here's the point of all this. You can't have all three. Fast shutter, you lose light. Deep focus, you lose light. Clean image, you lose speed. Someone has to lose. In a controlled environment, a studio with big strobes, fancy lights, you can really cheat physics. You really can have it all. But in the real world, where a lot of photographers operate, where we have to exist in the world, when the light is dying and the hummingbird is gone, this is when it becomes the hostage situation. This is when you have to choose what you're willing to kill to get the shot. Everything is about intentionality, which leads me to something called denoise and why I fucking hate it. Warning, this might be a hot take. There are features in every photo software now that reduce the noise for you. One click and it scrubs the grain away. And I have to tell you, I hate it. I think I've used it maybe once in my entire career, and I regretted it immediately. I didn't really want to use it because denoise exists for really two reasons, and this might get me in trouble. One, it's for people who don't understand exposure, and so they shoot an image so badly and try to fix it later. Or two, and this is the dangerous one, they equate noise with bad. We're so terrified of imperfection that we've built software to scrub it out. And here's the irony. In an effort to remove the grain, we're stripping the texture, the life, the soul out of the image. We're choosing plastic over real. And that, I think, is a tragedy. Stay with me. And I think we do this everywhere now. We have trained ourselves, our machines, to denoise the human experience. Open up Instagram, scroll through it. It looks like a visual sedative, doesn't it? It's an endless stream of coffee cups on marbles with speckled, beautiful light, succulents in white pots, skin so retouched that the human being underneath has been erased. Listen, I'm not much better. I posted a photo 2 weeks ago that I color graded for 45 minutes because I knew it would perform. It's smooth, warm, safe, 300 likes, 0 people actually feeling anything because I wanted the dopamine more than I wanted the truth. But here's the darker part, right? It's not just us. The tools are actually conspiring to do this. Pull out your iPhone and take a picture of a sunset. The phone isn't capturing reality. It's actually rejecting it. Apple has spent probably billions of dollars on R&D and focusing groups and A/B testing to figure out exactly what stimulates the lizard brain of the average consumer. And when the data came back, we like sugar, right? We like high contrast. We like oversaturated blues. We like bright shadows. So when you hit that shutter button on the phone software takes like 12 exposures in a microsecond. It then uses AI software to stitch them all together. It lifts the shadows so that nothing is hidden. It pulls down the highlights so nothing is blown out. It sharpens the edges. It pumps up the color. It creates a computational lie. And it gives you the image that focus groups said that they wanted, not the image that was actually there, right? It is the visual equivalent of MSG. It tastes good immediately, but has absolutely no nutritional value. And it's not just photos. Look at movies. Go watch the original Godfather, Blade Runner, Heat. These movies were shot on film, and film has limits. The cinematographers, people like Gordon Willis, had to make choices. They had to let the shadows go pitch black. They had to let the windows blow out. These, quote, mistakes were the style. The darkness was the point. You couldn't see Marlon Brando's eyes. And that's exactly why he was terrifying. Now, look at a modern blockbuster. They're all shooting on these ARRI Alexas with digital sensors with 14 to 15 stops of dynamic range, which means that they capture everything and they squeeze every ounce of data in the shadows and the highlights because the studio executives are terrified of the audience missing something. And so they light everything. They grade everything to be flat and visible and safe because we're all watching on shitty televisions. We have traded atmosphere for information. We don't want mystery anymore. We want content. Everything is lit. Everything is visible. Technically perfect, but emotionally dead. Because we have trained ourselves to believe that fixing the image is the same as making it better. We think if we just remove the noise and lift enough of the shadows that we finally have a perfect picture. But we don't. We just have a really clean picture of nothing. And I wish I could say that I'm above all this. I wish I could tell you that I'm the brave artist fighting for the shadows, but I'm not. I've just been domesticated just like everyone else, which kills me because I used to be better at this. We lived in the Northwest for a few years. It was Bellingham, Washington. And back then I had a Canon 5D Mark III and this 50 millimeter 1.2, and it really never left my side. I took it everywhere. I took it to the grocery store. I'm not kidding. To shitty diners, on walks in the rain, on walks in the woods. Obviously, I wasn't trying to make portfolio pieces back then. I was actually a senior graphic designer for a tech company. I wasn't trying to make money from it. And I wasn't thinking about whether the light was good. I just saw things and I shot them. I was just making images, and whether it was in a badly lit diner with yellow fluorescent tubes or rainy streets with blown out highlights, or Lucy as a toddler running in the mud with terrible light. The photos were sometimes grainy. They were imperfect. The exposure was garbage half the time. But honestly, looking back, when I look at my work from 10,000 feet, a lot of those images are really some of my favorites. And if I'm really honest with you, I don't really shoot like that anymore. Now, if I take out my camera, it's strategic, it's for a job, it's planned, it's curated. And if I do shoot personal photos, if I do want to shoot photos of Lucy, I will say things like, let's go to La Jolla and shoot some cool portraits at the beach with Loki. And I shoot it like a lifestyle campaign. I have a hard time stepping, outside of my commercial photographer self to create images that are interesting and have life in them. I've stopped documenting my life and I've started to art direct it, which makes me think of a moment of a few years ago. More than that, I don't know. I've lost all track of time and space. But Lucy is in the living room. She's younger. She's maybe 4 or 5 at the time. It's a totally unscripted, natural moment, right? She's building this precarious tower out of wooden blocks, those old school wooden blocks. And she's focused and she's humming to herself. There's music playing on her Sonos and she's completely lost in her own little world. But the light was a disaster. It's noon. It's hard sun blasting through the sliding glass door. There's hot spots blowing out the floor and parts of the wall. And there's deep crushed shadows where she was sitting in the corner of the living room. There's mixed color temperatures. There's blue daylight clashing with the more tungsten of my lamps. Technically, this whole scene is a nightmare, but emotionally, she was alive in it, right? Maybe the chaos of the light even matched the chaos of the play. And I thought I needed to remember this. So I grabbed my camera, my now much newer, more expensive camera, and I brought it to my eye. And I hated what I saw. And before I could even stop myself, the art director part of me took over. The lizard brain kicked in. I lowered the camera and I said, "Hey, Lucy, can we move your blocks over here by the window?" And so I moved her. I moved her out of the shadows. I moved her out of the moment. I moved her into a soft directional window light because I knew it would wrap around her face perfectly. And being the good kid, she did it. She moved her blocks over to the window and she started to build again. And she looked up at me and gave me this smile, the one that dad has a camera smile. And I fired off a few frames. But it was a totally different scene. Same subject, same supposed story, better light, but no soul. The photo is fine. It's a nice photo. The exposure good. The skin tone is good. If I sent it to my parents, they would love it. If I posted it on Facebook, everyone would probably like it. But the moment wasn't by the window. The moment was in the dark corner of the living room with the blocks. I didn't capture the memory. I actually killed it. I literally stopped her life to fake a new one that looked better on a histogram and an image that I think would be more impressive the people on social media. I wasn't thinking about Lucy or her story or the moment. I was being selfish. I was creating something dishonest. And to be honest with you, I have a hard time turning that part of my brain off. I caught myself doing it probably a couple days later when we were at the park and she was running on the grass. She's living her life, right? Enjoying the moment. And the sun was just aimed, just blasting her face. And I wanted her more backlit. I had this idea of an image of her silhouetted with this tree lined background behind her. So I stopped her running. I stopped the moment and had her turn around. So the silhouette would be perfect. So the light would be interesting. And listen, the light was better. It was actually a pretty cool image. It was a better photo. But again, I stopped something real. I stopped a moment to art direct it. And I felt like I was beginning to art direct her childhood right into the ground. Here's the sick joke of this whole thing. I didn't fail the moment with Lucy because I'm a bad photographer. I actually failed because I think I'm a good one. The problem isn't that I don't understand light. The problem is that actually I know too much. I am suffering from an overdose of education. I have been trained so thoroughly by clients, by creative directors, by other amazing photographers, by the algorithm that I can't turn it off. I can't unsee the math. I can't look at a sunset without seeing histogram. I can't look at my daughter's playing in the shadows without calculating dynamic range. I can't just be there in the moment. The market has colonized my vision. And it's not just me. It's the landscape photographer who stares at this majestic mountain and feels disappointment because the clouds aren't epic enough for the algorithm. It's the wedding photographer who misses the tear running down the groom's cheek because she was too busy checking her rim light. It's the street photographer who deletes a moment of pure humanity because there is motion blur. And look, we have this tool, this machine that was designed to capture the human experience in all its messy, grainy, imperfect truth. And we are terrified to actually use our camera for that, not because we don't know how, but because we've been so rewarded for perfect for so long that we've forgotten what honest actually looks like. So let's name the enemy, shall we? Let's be clear what this is. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. The enemy isn't grain. It's not noise. It's not the fact that your hand shook or the focus missed. The enemy is actually competence. It is the slow creeping rot of expertise. It's the thing that happens when you get good enough to know better and you stop being dangerous. You stop taking risks because you know the math. You've memorized the formula for safe. It is the professionalization of the human soul. We are rewiring our brains to sand off the edges of everything. We are sterilizing our own expertise in real time. We see a moment that's messy and beautiful and chaotic, and we immediately, instinctively, we reach for the bleach. We correct the color. We fix the exposure. We wipe away the grime until there's nothing left but a clean, sterile, palatable product. I moved my daughter to the window. I posed her. I curated the frame. Why? Because I've been infected by the market. I'm not looking at my kid anymore. I'm looking at a composition. I'm not making a memory. I'm not telling a story. I'm creating an asset. I'm strip mining my own life for content. And the worst part, I don't know how to stop. The calculator is running in the background 24 hours a day, turning every shadow into a problem and every beam of light into a commodity. We have become amazing technicians, but we are boring as hell. Here's the secret about grain. An audience, I think, will forgive grain. They will never forgive blur. And here's why. Grain is texture, it's grit, it's the visual friction of reality rubbing up against the sensor. When you look at Capa's photos, they're grainy as hell. They look like they were developed in dirty water, and you don't care. In fact, you believe them more because of it. The grain tells you that the photographer was struggling, that the light was dying, that the situation was hostile. Grain is proof of life. It's proof that someone reached into the chaos, grabbed a handful of it, and dragged it back to show you. It feels like a memory. But blur is the visual signature of hesitation. Blur says, I wasn't sure. Blur says, I try to save the exposure instead of saving the moment. Blur is what happens when you're too polite to make a choice. You didn't want the grain, but you didn't have the light. So you sat in the middle. You hedged your bets and got nothing. And when I look at how I'm shooting now, I'm blurring my own life, I think. I'm moving my daughter to the window. I'm waiting for the golden hour. I'm only taking the camera out when the conditions are safe or sanitized or when I'm being paid enough. And I'm hedging my bets against my own memories. I'm treating every moment like it needs to be optimized before it's worth capturing. Like my life isn't good enough to be photographed until I've cleaned it up first. I don't think people remember clean. Nobody recounts the story of the time that the lighting was adequate and perfect. They remember the brave. They remember the texture. They remember the feeling of being there. But I don't know how to be brave anymore. Not with my own life, not when the stakes are this low and the reward is just living. Being present, seeing the mess and loving it anyway. I got worse as I got better. I don't know if I can get it back. Look, I don't have the answer for you. I don't have a distinct 3-step plan to unbreak your brain. I don't know how to uncage myself. I don't know how to see like I used to. I don't know how to stop the calculator that runs in the back of my head every time the sun hits the wall. But I do know this. The photos that I love, the ones that actually matter to me, the ones that I would save in a fucking fire are the ones from before I got good, quote unquote, before I knew the rules, when I just pointed the camera at stuff because it looked interesting and I didn't give a damn about the histogram. Those photos are grainy, they're badly lit, they're technically incorrect, and they're the only ones that I can't stop looking at. So maybe that's the trade. Maybe it's not the shutter speed or the ISO. Maybe it's not the aperture for depth. Maybe the trade is competence for honesty, expertise for presence, the ability to make a perfect image traded for the ability to see at all. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I can make that trade because I've spent too long on this side. I've optimized myself into a corner. I've polished the skill until there's no friction left. I've professionalized the joy right out of it, but I miss it. I miss carrying my camera for no reason. I miss the bad light. I miss not knowing if the shot worked until I got home and opened up the files. I miss the surprise. I miss the noise. So here's what I'm going to try. It's small, but it's all I've got. Next time Lucy is doing something, anything, I'm going to photograph it where she is. In the shitty light, in the yellow wash of the kitchen, in the backlit chaos of the living room. I'm not going to move her. I'm not going to pose her. I'm not going to fix it. I'm just going to crank that ISO. I'm going to let the grain eat the shadows. I'm going to let the image fall apart. And I'm going to see what happens. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather have a messy photo of real life than a perfect photo of a fake one. Stop trying to perfect exposure. The light is never perfect. That's the biggest, I think, myth of this whole thing. Make the trade, crank the ISO, be brave, and whatever you do, don't blur. Stay curious, stay courageous, and yeah, stay terrible.